Salt sprinkled with the bloody tear. God be with you.
So what is it you want from me now?
Ah, my dear apprentice, everything's gone to the devil. I'm living from hand to mouth, sleeping on straw, and the local peasants won't buy from me. They say they don't trust me, as if I were some kind of charlatan. Can you believe it? Does this look to you like the face of a swindler? I'm an honest trader in sacred goods, whose only concern is the welfare of troubled souls.
A regular good Samaritan.
And any time now the slanderous gossip will spread here from Sassau. I should leave before things get worse. But I can't go anywhere until I've made a bit of coin. So what's needed is to give the locals a bit of encouragement, to open their hearts and purses.
Sure. Kick him onto the path of righteousness.
What do you take me for? I wouldn't hurt a fly. Violence is for the dull-witted. We must gently demonstrate to them the necessity of buying my remedies. For example, to ward off a revenant.
Revenant? What revenant?
The dead, returned from the grave, a corpse that the soul is unable to depart from, which wanders among the living, filled with rage at its wretched fate.
Yeah, I saw something like that once. But it was just some drunk going home from the tavern after losing all his money at dice.
Don't make light of such things. Now tell me, do you know how to deal with a revenant?
Sprinkling poppy seeds on the grave?
Well, that works for mares, but it would probably only provoke a revenant. You are my trained apprentice, but the ignorant villager is entirely at a loss how to deal with such dark forces. It is our sacred duty to prepare them for such threats.
And how do you propose to do that?
Well, they're all doubting Thomases. They need proof. We'll need a grave, an empty grave that we can use. There's one along the way to Sassau, but it's got one minor shortcoming.
What's that?
Well, it's not entirely empty.
Not entirely? What does that mean?
You have to dig it up first.
But that's a sin.
Refusing to help the needy is also a sin. I haven't had a decent meal for 40 days and 40 nights.
My conscience is clear where your stomach is concerned. Disturbing a grave is a grave sin.
The grave is not in hallowed ground, so that's hardly worth one Lord's Prayer in penance. I asked a priest once, just out of curiosity.
Why this particular grave?
The locals don't like to talk about it, so it's surely got some sinister past behind it. And in places like that, revenants sprout up like mushrooms after rain.
Well, if that's how it is, we could open old wounds. That could easily set people against us. Again.
Then it would be best if no one could connect us to it, wouldn't it?
I'll need a spade then.
Yes, dig it up and remove the remains, leaving no trace.
And what am I to do with the remains?
Keep them. Human remains are always handy to have around.
Great. And how do we spread the word of this revenant?
There's a gossip in every village. Here, too, a woman who'll spread news quicker than a dozen messengers on the fastest steeds.
Where does this woman live?
The last house on the left, on the road to Sassau. She was the first person I met here, and by the time I reached the village green, I already had a mob looking suspiciously at me. The rumor-mongering fishwife.
And what am I to tell this gossip?
All you have to do is casually mention the empty grave, and before evening, I'll wager the whole village will know about it.
And that's all?
Not quite. You should ask her who was buried there. So we've got a story to work with.
So, dig up the grave, talk to the gossip.
And the remains. Don't forget to remove them. Otherwise, no one will believe in the revenant. Good luck, then. I'll take the old woman with me.
God be with you, good wife. Has something happened here?
Heavens, no. It's quiet here, unlike some other places.
And what about that empty grave?
What empty grave would that be now?
The one beyond the village, alongside the road to Sasau. Just by the river, on the Pine Headland.
How would you know it's empty, unless it was dug up?
Oh, it's dug up, all right. Freshly. And empty. I saw it with my own 2 eyes.
Lord in heaven, what in the name of...
How come it's not in hallowed ground, anyway? Only unrepentant sinners are buried like that. Usually.
I don't like to say. It's an old wound that's best forgotten.
Whose grave is it?
Well, once a long time ago there was a young charcoal burner living here with his wife. There was always a lot of charcoal burners here, but this fellow worked alone. That's not an easy job for one man.
Well, no one wanted to work with him, or what?
Ah, he was a hard-headed fellow who always wanted to take care of his family himself.
Well, I can understand that. It's always better to work for yourself than break your back for someone else.
His wife was expecting, though no one knew it yet, and he wasn't doing well at all. Soon enough they had nothing to eat, and so he took to thieving.
Well, thieving is wrong.
Aye, but when there's a child on the way and your wife hasn't the strength to get out of bed for the hunger, well, you ought to think differently.
And did he get caught?
Well, at first it was just a few eggs going missing from people's hen coops, but then it was anything that wasn't nailed down, and in the end they caught him.
And I suppose he was harshly punished for it.
Even then he didn't let on why he was doing it. They whipped the skin off his back and banished him from Leditchko.
So justice was done then?
It wasn't enough for some folk. When the butcher found out he'd never get any compensation, he wanted them to chop off the charcoal burner's hands. If the bailiff hadn't talked sense into him, he'd have done it himself with his cleaver.
Well, he got off lightly enough then.
And in the end, he got what was coming to him, and more.
The butcher caught up with him?
No, no. It was the mills of God turning slowly but surely. His wife bled to death in childbirth, and the child died with her.
I'm sorry to hear that. But at least he knew they were gone to a better place.
True, lad.
Nothing could have been done to save them.
There was no one there. He had no one who would care for his wife. They say on that day he parted ways with God forever, and he turned his back on the village too. I reckon he never forgave himself, nor us either.
The Lord moves in mysterious ways. But how did he end up?
ask me that, lad. I beg you.
Come now, good wife. You can't leave the story unfinished.
I said no. Will you let it lie?
Hey!
I know who was buried in that grave. A young charcoal burner.
So begins the tragic tale of the young charcoal burner who became entangled with the devil himself.
Oh, don't start. What devil? I'm trying to tell you. Ugh. He was from Ledechko. He was trying to eke out a living for himself and his wife, but he couldn't manage. When she fell pregnant, he took to stealing.
Pride drove him from the straight and narrow path, and soon he sold his soul to the devil to fill his stomach.
They caught him and punished him, but some of the people he'd robbed didn't think it was enough. Then when his wife died in childbirth, and the child too, he blamed everyone for it. Even God, apparently.
But when the time came to pay his debt to hell, the devil had no use for his soul, and took his wife and child instead. The charcoal burner cursed God, who struck him down in righteous vengeance. But the dead man's soul never left his body. He came back as a revenant to vent his rage at God and men and take vengeance on the living.
Jesus, did you listen to what I said at all?
Sorry, did you say something?
Oh, never mind. What do you want me to do with it?
Well, the question is, what would the revenant do to get revenge on the villagers? Well, apprentice?
He was stealing food from people, right? So, supposing he started again.
We should steal from people? Disgraceful. Have you no shame?
Maybe just a few eggs from hen coops, like the gossip mentioned.
Well, that wouldn't be too serious a sin. Will they put it down to the revenant, though?
They would, if I put some charcoal there instead.
And their nourishment he turned into ash.
The gossip mentioned the butcher. It seems he was infuriated that the charcoal burner's punishment was too lenient.
And the revenant spoiled their meat with his malign touch.
How's that?
Spoiled meat is a classic example of a revenant's power.
I thought it was the work of bad butchers.
That too, sometimes.
So, I should switch the good meat for bad at the butcher's. What about the butcher woman?
What about her?
Her conscience was troubled on account of her man, and she couldn't sleep. But I helped her, so she's found some peace.
So, no problem then.
What? I'm supposed to scare the wits out of her and start all over again?
All right, if you can find some other solution, you don't have to switch the meat. But I wouldn't worry about her. But make sure it's the same kind of meat. Not even a revenant will turn a cow into a chicken.
What about his wife and child? No doubt he'd want to avenge their death.
Well, how did they die?
In childbirth.
And when his love turned to rage, the water turned to blood. Nothing too original, but it's tried and tested. If you do it at the baths, everyone will hear of it.
How am I supposed to do that? It might be a bit suspicious if I'm seen walking around with a pail of blood.
No problem. There's a certain potion that will do the trick easily.
He cursed God. That's very serious.
What is it that most brings God to mind?
They don't have a church there. But everyone will have a rosary. I can't think of anything else.
That's it! If folks start losing their rosaries, they'll have sleepless nights over it.
You want me to steal rosaries? But that's...
Or just exchange them.
For what?
For nothing.
Great.
So, switch eggs for charcoal, switch the meat, color the water in the baths, and switch the rosaries. That ought to do it. I hope so. Of course, If you come up with anything else, don't let me hold you back. Talking to people might give you ideas. Traders, the bailiff.
Well, what if someone sees me in the act?
They mustn't. Otherwise, it'll end up like Sasau all over again. Don't draw attention to yourself, or they'll put two and two together.
Sure. I'll keep my head down. And how will I know if I've succeeded? I doubt it'll be announced on the market square.
I'll be the first to know. They'll come running to me for a remedy, like hens at feeding time. Off you go and raise hell.
But whatever he did, don't you think he deserves some peace?
Dear Henry, after all the poor wretch went through, I'd say he's beyond any peace.
Well, he certainly won't have any as long as I'm carrying his bones around with me.
Ah, but you know who those remains could help.
Help? Who? How?
Me, of course. And I'd pay you a nice price for a revenant's bones.
But there is no revenant.
Not yet. What do you say?
I think I'd rather bury them.
You could. But what a waste. Imagine the power they could have.
At least the poor wretch will have peace at last.
Maybe. As long as you bury him in hallowed ground. Otherwise, you're wasting your time.
Like in Ratai, maybe?
Well, that's probably the nearest. That gossip-mongering crone would know.
True, I could ask her.
If you must. But for heaven's sake, don't even hint to her what you're up to. Goodbye.
God save. How may I help you, good night?
Good wife.
Yes, lad. What can I do for you?
You know, I can't stop thinking about what happened to that poor wretch.
Have you no consideration for a poor old woman? I told you I don't want to talk about it.
It might relieve you to talk to someone.
Relieve me from what?
Well, guilt.
Guilt? Why should I feel guilty?
Well, clearly something weighs heavy on your soul, just like the other villagers. The older ones. And I'd say it's connected to that empty grave. Well, that wretch returns as a revenant, and no one does anything. It's not just fear, but more like everyone is expecting some punishment that was bound to come one day.
Oh, you might be right. Maybe it would give me some peace in my old age to finally tell the whole story. Several people from the village went to have it out with Lev, but he grabbed an axe and drove them off. He swore if anyone came near him, he'd burn their house down. Then he buried his wife and child in the meadows beyond Ledechko. I saw him carving 3 statues there.
Lev, you say his name was? What kind of statues?
There's 3 roughly carved beams there, each with a human face, except the smallest, which has no face at all.
For the stillborn child, I suppose. What happened then?
Nothing. He went back to his work, but never spoke to the villagers again. He'd even go all the way to Rattay for food, rather than talk to anyone here.
So he died alone in the end?
Actually, it was the villagers. It was us that killed him.
What? Just on account of his stealing?
No. Not long after, fires started springing up in the village. And when the first house burned down, the folk were very angry.
And of course suspicion fell on Lev.
Everyone was dead certain it was him. They all remembered his words. Do you know how arsonists are punished, lad?
No, I don't.
By burning on the pyre. But no one wanted to waste time with the law. We just went to his house at night, smashed in the door and windows, and threw lighting torches inside. And that was the end of him. But the fires didn't stop.
So he was innocent?
He was.
Well, I won't condemn you for it. It's for God to judge, but... may he forgive you for it.
Thanks, lad. I pray every day for forgiveness, and it's a weight off my shoulders to tell someone.
May the Lord watch over you.
My respects to you.
Chickens. That should be no problem.
God save you.
What's the recipe for that potion you were talking about?
You mean for coloring the water? Ah, well,
Well,
pay close attention now.
I'm all ears.
How love turned to bloodshed. Once there was a knight who, though upright and noble-looking, had a prickly, unapproachable appearance. He fell in love with a fragile young maid, whom he saw with her sisters in a field, all wearing bright red wimples. But he was afraid his prickly exterior would frighten her. So he asked the advice of another knight, a pious and learned crusader, who carried the name of the patron saint of his order with pride. The pious knight told him he would arrange a rendezvous with the maid. All three would drink wine together by the river, and he would help his friend to get acquainted with her. This they did, but the maid fell in love instead with the pious knight. The stern knight was enraged and challenged his rival to a duel. The two fought long and fiercely, but they were equally matched, and so, in the end, they both fell mortally wounded, anguished at the tragedy her beauty had caused. The young maid took a dagger from one of the knights and plunged it into her own heart. Their bodies lay together on the ground, and the blood flowed from them into the river, turning the waters crimson.
I thought you were going to tell me the recipe, not some fable.
Well, it is the recipe. I mean, the recipe is concealed in the story.
What on earth for?
So I don't forget it.
All right. So what does it mean?
I can't remember.
Great. So if you don't know, who does?
You'll figure it out, my loyal apprentice. I remember there are 3 plants in the story, but that's about all. But I know it was a simple recipe. It should be enough to grind the ingredients and brew them together for one turn. So, all you have to do is work out what the ingredients are from the story.
Sure. Why make things simple if you can complicate them? What about the dead man's remains?
You still have them?
No, you said to keep them. What do I do with them now?
I'll buy them from you.
What on earth for?
The bones of a revenant. Those can be valuable goods. What do you say?
All right. I'll sell them to you.
Splendid. It's not the Holy Grail. Forget it. Goodbye.
have some rest.
I've lost everything. My home, my family, my livelihood. Be merciful, good people.
Jesus Christ be praised.
Farewell.
This meat is too fresh. I can't put this there. The butcher will know right away it's not the same meat.
I'm glad to see you.
So, how am I doing so far?
What? You've already started?
That's still not enough, is it?
You've hardly even started yet. See you later.
This is venison. From roe deer. No wonder it's under lock and key. Lamb. And I'll need lots of lamb. And I'll need lots of it if I'm to switch it all. This isn't the right kind of meat.
Somebody help me!
You showed him. Thank you, that thieving magpie. You can't trust anyone these days. Ahem. And just so you know, I'm no pinch purse. Here's a small reward.
Thanks.
Hey!
Ooh.
Yeah. Come on now. Ugh, I reckon this is going nowhere.
Squeezed from grapes, cultivated from a... What? What the...
So, how am I doing so far?
Everyone's talking about the Revenant, as if it were the 11 plagues of Egypt.
Wasn't it 10?
Oh, you still have a lot to learn. Nevertheless, the baths are closed. No one will tell you why, but everyone is clearly frightened. Half the village is without rosaries. Someone even wanted to buy one from me.
And did you sell it?
I don't trade in such banal goods. But I sold him a cat's paw.
I didn't know a cat's paw was good for warding off revenants.
Henry, all the goods I have are good for warding off revenants. Everyone is talking about how all the butcher's meat went off after being touched by the hand of evil.
What, does this look like the hand of evil to you? That's still not enough, is it?
You're getting there, but they need a bit more pushing. See you later.
that?
Rare spices and tinctures, magical elixirs and amulets, miraculous ointments, and remarkable remedies. What do you want?
So, how am I doing so far?
Good work, Henry. The whole village is shaking in its boots. Soon people won't step outside the door without saying 3 Hail Marys.
Ugh, I'm glad to hear it. I'm beginning to feel haunted myself.
No one in Ledechko would eat a single egg, even if they had any, because all the hens are hexed.
Well, at least they've got fuel for their fires. So, the job is done, eh?
Not quite.
But you just said the whole village is shaking with fear.
The whole village, but for one individual.
Well, surely that doesn't matter.
That's what I thought too. Only this fellow is giving everyone the benefit of his wisdom. He needs shaking up before he undoes your good work.
But if he's not been scared yet, what more can I do to frighten him?
Well, when he's not hanging around here ruining my trade, he's in the tavern boasting that he'd happily sleep by that empty grave to prove there's no revenant.
Yeah, I bet he would.
Exactly. He just needs a little persuasion. And once he's there, make it the most terrifying night of his life.
Well, what are we waiting for then?
It's best to be well prepared. You ought to find out something about him, so there's no surprises.
The gossip woman?
Naturally. And Henry, before we get to that grave, you can still try and come up with more ways to frighten the villagers. The more terrified they are, the more groschen there'll be in it for me. For us, that is. Goodbye.
Somebody help me! You showed him. Thank you, that thieving magpie. You can't trust anyone these days. And just so you know I'm no pinch purse, here's a small reward.
Thanks.
God watch over you, good night, especially in these dark times. Can I do something for you?
Good wife.
You're still here, lad? I thought you'd have fled by now.
Fled? Why on earth would I do that?
Because there's a revenant on the prowl. The whole village is talking about it, and everyone is terrified.
Ah, that. But I heard there's one brave lad who's not afraid.
You mean Felix?
Well, I don't know what his name is, but he's always arguing in the tavern that there's no revenant.
That's him. The fool doesn't believe what's going on under his own nose. He hasn't the sense he was born with.
He even said he'd spend the night at the graveside, just to prove there's no revenant.
Aye, all talk and no action.
Is he brave or just stupid? Surely he's afraid of something.
I couldn't tell you. But if he's to be believed, he doesn't fear the devil himself.
And do you believe him?
Well, it's true he never seems bothered by anything. But then he's always with that other pair.
What pair?
2 mates of his.
But he was alone in the tavern.
Aye, they're not locals, but outside the village, wherever he goes, they go with him.
Who are these 2 fellas?
They're not bad lads, but they're no heroes, that's for sure.
How's that?
Them 2 have their fears, but then who doesn't?
What are they afraid of?
The first one wouldn't even go into the woods alone, because he's afraid of wild animals.
Ah, is that so? I wonder why.
He got lost in the forest as a young lad, and he wasn't found till next morning. Shaking and pale as a ghost he was when they found him.
Poor lad. He must have been scared out of his wits.
That he was.
What about the other one?
He's afraid of fire.
Why?
His own father burned him, God forgive him. As a young lad, he was playing with fire and nearly set fire to the house. So his pa taught him a lesson he wouldn't forget.
Poor lad. That's a terrible way to teach a child.
My words, exactly.
Ah, it's been an interesting chat. Thanks, good wife.
May the Lord watch over you.
Huh? Damn.
So, how am I doing so far?
I already told you, Henry.
I know.
I haven't heard anything new.
Uh-huh. This brave fella, Felix his name is, if we can get him to spend the night at the grave, he won't be alone. Wherever he goes, he always has 2 mates tagging along.
Like he's afraid to be alone.
Could be.
So, if we could get him there alone, it shouldn't be too hard to scare him.
Maybe, maybe not. He claims he's not afraid of anything.
That's easy to say. I'm not so sure. Only, we have to get rid of the other 2. What do you know about them?
One of them is afraid of wild animals. Won't even go into the woods on his own.
I see. And the other one?
Well, he's afraid of fire, but I doubt an ordinary campfire would do the trick.
Well, we'll think of something. Anyway, you take care of the first one.
How, though?
Haven't you learned anything from me? Talk to a dog.
Of course. Why didn't I think of that? Any particular one, Master?
The most frightening one, of course.
And how am I supposed to recognise him? One looks the same as another.
By his bark, naturally. Can't you hear him? He'd scare the wits out of anyone.
That's a dog.
Either that or Satan in the guise of a beast.
All right. And what do I do with him?
Have a conversation with him and see if you can mimic his bark.
Yeah, great idea. People will think I'm barking mad.
God be with you.
Come on then. Bark. What a beast you are. All right, let's see. Ruff. Ruff. Again? Boo! 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 That's still not quite it. Boo! Boo! No. Boo! 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 That's it. And now I'm officially the village idiot.
So, how did you get on?
I found that mutt. Although from the noises it made, you'd hardly guess it was a dog.
So you've learned to bark.
I have, master.
So bark.
I never thought I'd stoop so low. Boo! Boo!
Perfect.
But what if it's not enough?
Ah, ye of little faith. Besides, can you think of any other way?
If we want to have him there on his own, I could always knock the other two out.
And what if he finds them unconscious?
I can always haul them off somewhere he won't find them.
Just make sure you don't botch it, Henry. It could easily turn very sour.
Don't worry. But what about the other fella?
Ah, yes, apprentice. You have the good fortune to witness a genius at work. Watch and learn. An oil lamp.
An oil lamp?
Precisely. Isn't it ingenious?
A marvellous invention, I grant you. But what do you want to do with it?
That's the clever part. I've hung a lamp like this over the Revenant's grave. All you have to do is shoot it down. It'll fall on the grave and burst into flames.
Well, that could work. Only...
Only what?
How can you be sure I'll manage to shoot it down?
I believe in you, Henry. You're my apprentice, versed in the ways of our craft.
Right, I almost forgot.
Anyway, you can practice. The lamp is already hanging up. It just hasn't been lit yet.
Aye, I'll give it a go. And then what?
Then you just have to goad our Felix into putting his money where his mouth is.
But what if he doesn't fall for it?
Refusing would ruin his credibility. Go and see him. I'll bet you anything, if you present it right, he'll jump at it.
All right, I'll give it a try.
Good. Don't delay, though. Practice with the lamp first, if you like, or just go straight to him.
I've heard there's a revenant haunting these parts.
Ah, you don't want to believe those old wives' tales.
Well, it's not true then.
Of course not. It's just a lot of fairy tales.
You're kind of sure of yourself, aren't you?
That I am. And what's it to you?
Nothing. It's just that, well, bold talk doesn't prove anything.
Are you saying I'm lying?
Well, can you prove your claims?
What?
Well, supposing you spent the night at that grave, like you say. That'd prove there's no revenant, wouldn't it?
You reckon so? I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. Besides, since you're so fearless, it'd be nothing to you, right?
Aye, that's right.
How about something to buck up your courage? Ah, probably not. You don't need it.
I don't, but it can't hurt. Thanks, Em.
So when are you going to do it?
Just as soon as I can in the evening.
Right. And now you can... Shh! Quiet, Henry. You'll give us away.
Sorry. What's that you're wearing?
What do you think it is?
I don't know, some new fashion?
It's my Revenant costume, of course.
My apologies, Master, for not recognising it immediately.
You obviously still have a lot to learn.
So, did they come?
Yes, all three. They're camping at the top of the hill.
Right. I'll have time to get haunting then. Where do I start?
I'll leave that up to you. The main thing is to scare off the two cronies first. I'll take care of fearless Felix.
So I'll scare one off with the lamp,
Yes, just make sure no one sees you shooting.
and the other one with fearsome noises.
That will probably take a few attempts. Ideally, a bit at a time.
Let him work up an appetite for more, so to speak.
I couldn't have put it better myself. Just don't give yourself away.
I won't, but if they do happen to see me coming...
Then you'd better vanish like a wisp of smoke, or make some excuse.
And what will you be doing?
I'll wait somewhere out of the way for a while, and then I'll crash in. So make sure the other two are gone by then.
All right.
Look out.
Hey, what was that? A wolf?
What's that
No,
noise?
it can't be a wolf.
What kind of
But
animal
what?
makes a noise like that?
Christ, that noise again. What the?
An animal?
Probably nothing.
Could it be an animal?
Oh, no, not again. No, please, God, no. I can't stand this. No, no, please, no. They're everywhere. They'll devour me. Jesus Christ, I've got to get away from here.
What's going on there? What's that noise? What kind of animal makes a noise like that?
Some animal, I suppose.
Oh my god.
Fire?
Where did that fire
Where
come
did that
from?
come from?
Jesus, no. Not fire. No, 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 no. Jesus Christ.
Roar! Roar!
What are you?
Roar!
I didn't do anything. Leave me alone. Please.
That was something.
How did you like that, eh?
Wonderful! I haven't had so much fun since I dressed up as the Pope.
Did you see him run? Like all the demons of hell were on their heels.
One was quite enough, evidently.
So what now?
Now I just wait for my customers to turn up. Come and see me tomorrow before noon, and you'll get your well-earned reward. Ah, my dear apprentice, how happy I am to see you.
So, it all worked out then?
Like a dream. I didn't sell half as much in Sasau.
That's good news. Now, about that thing you promised me.
Your well-deserved reward, certainly. Here you have it. Here's something extra for you. I sold a lot more than I expected, and I think it's all thanks to you.
What will you do now?
I could go now. I've coin enough, but I'll wait a while before moving on.
Why? I thought you didn't want to stay too close to Sasau for long.
But what if you needed my help?
Indeed. How could I forget all you've done for me? Well, at least I'll know where to find you.